Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. This is Nitin Sridhar from Indica Moksha, Advaita Academy, and a very warm welcome to yet another session of Weekend with Wisdom. Let me begin with a small prayer. Om Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavadyapta Dehaya Sri Dakshina Murtaye Namaha. Today we have Sri Dr. Aravinda Ravji. In the last Weekend with Wisdom that we did, Aravinda Ravji had shed light on one of the Shatakatrayam of Bhartrihari, that was on Niti-Shatakam, focused on Dharma and Artha. And I had promised you that we will soon bring the other two Shatakam as well. So as part of this today's session, Aravinda Ravji will be focusing on Sringara Shatakam, how we should pursue desires, how we should pursue kama within the confines of purusharthas, within the confines of dharma. So this is the topic that Aravinda Ravji will be shedding light based on the work of Bhartrihari. A very interesting topic. I am sure all of you will hugely benefit from it. Just to give a brief introduction to those who do not know, most of you already know, Dr. Aravinda Rav is associated with Advaita Academy for a very long time. He takes regular classes. He is currently teaching the class on Sanskrita. So, but still, to give a brief introduction, Dr. Aravinda Rav is a retired Director General of Police, Andhra Pradesh, who studied Sanskrit under Mahamahopadhyay Padma Shri Dr. Shri Pulela Shri Ramachandrudu, and then studied Vedanta under Mahamahopadhyaya Swami Tattvavedananda Saraswati ji. And Aravinda Ravji has authored many books on Hindu philosophy. He is currently working on books such as on yoga philosophy and a few others. So a very warm welcome to you, sir. Thank you for taking time and doing this session. We are very happy to have
you here. Thank you.
You can start the session.
Okay. Om Shuklam Bharadharam Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayet Sarva Vignopashantaye. Om. Thank you, Sri Nitin Sridhar, for the nice introduction. And today we are talking about the Sringara Shatakam. As Sri Nitin Sridharji said, I covered Niti-Shatakam comfortably about 15 days ago, and we had two sessions on Niti-Shatakam. And I was telling you the general framework of the Bhartrihari, Subhashita-Trisati of Bhartrihari. The general structure is there are three Shatakams, as we know: Niti-Shataka, Sringara Shataka, and Vairagya Shataka. And Bhartrihari has covered the four Purusharthas. We know the four Purusharthas: Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. The four Purusharthas are covered in these three Shatakas. That is how we can see, very, very clearly see. And in the Niti-Shataka is not merely some moral instructions or something, some slokas on some morality, and you have to do this. Not only that, but it is about the way of the world. It is about how Niti also means. Niti is not necessarily is not only morality. Niti means policy. Niti means how a king has to conduct himself, and how a person has to conduct himself. How you have to ignore fools. How you have to cultivate good friends, how you have to cultivate the friendship of great scholars. So this is what we saw. So basically how a person has to grow in life. So that is Dharma and Artha, and also about the importance of Artha. Artha means wealth, revenue, wealth, and all resources which we need. So that Dharma and Artha, these two Purusharthas are covered in the Niti-Shataka. Kama is covered in the Sringara Shataka. And the last one, that is Vairagya Shataka, that covers moksha, the pursuit of the knowledge of self, liberation, etc. So talking about say Sringara Shataka, in this Indica moksha, The title is Indica Moksha, and also another title also is there, Weekend with Wisdom. So I have to be very careful to see that our wisdom is not weakened by studying the Sringara Shatakam. And Bhartrihari assures it that our wisdom will not be weakened, because Bhartrihari's idea is to take us through how a man has to, not only man, how a person has to handle this issue of karma. As Sridharji was saying, the karma, according to our Vedic structure, it has to be pursued within the framework of Dharma and moksha. That is the reason why artha and kama are sandwiched between Dharma on one side and moksha on the other side, and Dharma, artha and kama are sandwiched between these two. So which means that artha and kama have to be pursued within the framework of Dharma. And that should be in such a way that it should be conducive for the next step, that is the higher step, that is moksha. It should not in any way disturb, or it should not be say something which is disturbing that other next purushartha. So that is what we see in the entire structure. And we see that this purushartha called kama, it cannot be ignored in any tradition. It cannot be ignored in any tradition, whether it is our Indian tradition or any other tradition. It has to be accepted in all scriptures. That is, scriptures also have to accommodate the human needs. If the scriptures do not accommodate the human needs, they become irrelevant. So that is what we see. And the Krishna, I mean, we are aware of the statement of Krishna that is in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7-11. There is a shloka, there is a one line which says, Dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi varatarshabha. Dharma viruddha kamaha ahamasmi. That's what he says. Dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi. This kama which is manifesting in all the pranis, not only human beings. Kama is something which is common to all the beings, all the living beings. That is why it is said, Ahara nidra bhaya maithunani samanyametat pashuvir narana. Ahara, nidra, bhaya and maithuna. These are common for all the living beings. And buddhi alone, it is what distinguishes the human being. So kama is something which is essential, and that is the reason why we have to understand it. We have to have a healthy attitude towards it. So that is why we find that kama is something which is accepted. It has to be accepted, but it has to be regulated. It has to be in such a way that it does not disturb our higher pursuits. That is what we see. Then Bhartrihari also, we see that he also pursues the same view, and it should be conducive to liberation. And his idea is to lead a grihastha into that level. For example, if you read books on Vedanta books, what is their approach? Their approach is they guide a person who is already a mumukshu, a person who has already come on the path of moksha, or at least a seeker. So they do addressing. But Bhartrihari is addressing all the people in the society. It doesn't mean that he wants to make all the people sannyasis. His idea is to see that all the people, they enjoy these things, artha and kama, in a very healthy way, so that it doesn't become an obstacle in the pursuit of a higher goal. So that is what is his approach. So then the Sringara, what is the word Sringa? What does the word Sringara mean? So the Sringara, in fact, if you see the etymology, Sringam iyarti iti Sringara. Sringam iyarti means it occupies that Sringam. Sringam is the highest peak. Sringam actually means peak of a hill. It also means the horn of an animal. So Sringa is that. Sringam iyarti, it occupies a very high position. So in all the rasas, we have got so many rasas, 9 rasas in any kavya. If you see the kavya literature, Alankara Shastra and the kavyas, we find these 9 alankaras. And among the alankaras, Sringara occupies the highest position. So that is why it is called Sringam iyarti, it is Sringara. And it is for this reason that Bhartrihari starts the second, we can say second century of verses, the second 100 verses. He starts with an invocation to the god of love, naturally. The god of love, who is he? He is Manmatha. Manmatha, what is this meaning? What is his, what does it mean? Manaha mathnati, mana mathnati, iti manmatha, manaha mathnati iti manmatha. That is one who churns our mind. If manmatha enters the mind, He is a fellow who churns our mind. He doesn't make us, he doesn't keep us comfortable. So he says, the invocation is like this. Shambhu Swayambhu Harayo Harinekshananam Yenakriyanta Satatam Gruhakumbhadasa Vacham Agochara Charitra Vichitritaya Tasmai Namo Bhagavate Kusumayudhaya. He is called Kusumayudha. Kusuma is a flower. Kusumayudha means a person who has flowers as arrows. They are very soft arrows, but they do hit hard. So that is what he says. And by hitting hard, he has made Shambhu, Swayambhu, Hari, all these three people. Shambhu is Shiva. Swayambhu is Brahma. That is the creator Brahma, the four-headed Brahma, not Supreme Brahman. That is which we talk about, which we speak of in Vedanta. Shambhu, Swayambhu, Hari. Hari is Vishnu. So all these three people, Harinekshananam Gruhakumbhadasaha Kriyanta. So these three people have become almost the vassals of three women. So because of the power of this gentleman, because of the power of this Manmatha. So that is what it says. But it also has a Dvani. By mentioning Shambhu, the very mention of Shambhu also means we have to recall that story that Shambhu is a person who controlled Kama. Shambhu, of course, he destroyed Kama. He turned him into ashes by his looks, by his mere looks. That is Jnanagni. It is not as though a real fire went and burnt him. Jnanagni. Jnana is what destroys Kama. So that is what we also have to see here. That Jnana, we have to understand. We have to analyze what are its merits and demerits, and then only we will have a mature attitude to Kama. So by using the word Shambhu, that Dvani is very much there. So, but here what he says is Vacham Agochara Charitra Vichitritaya. So his this Manmatha's activities, something which are beyond words, indescribable. Vacham Agochara, beyond, they go beyond words, so inexplicable and mysterious are his ways. And he has made all these three, the Trinity, the three gods, as Gruhakumbhadasa. So he has almost made them vassals to these women. Then now here, of course, we have to start, before starting this Sringara Shatakam, where there is a lot of censorious approach to women. It appears like that, because Bhartrihari wrote in an age where men, it was actually a man's world. And they were freely talking about how woman is the person who is seductive, and woman is the person who is a sort of obstacle in the spiritual path and whatnot. But if we see the Vedantic literature, it's not so. In Vedantic literature, we find that there were women who were called Brahmavadinis. Women rishis, they were there. Rishis, they were called Brahmavadinis. Even in our literature also, we find people, not only Vedanta. Vedanta literature is partly history. But in our other books also, for example, Yoga Vasishtam, Tripura Rahasyam, there are women who are enlightened people, who have realized the Brahman, and whose husbands, they happen to be kings, and then they were basically who were indulging in sensual pleasures. So these women, they teach their husbands. So we have such characters also. For example, in for Yoga Vasishta, we have one character that is Hemalekha. Hemalekha is in Tripura Rahasya. This is a Chudala. There is a Chudala Upakhyanam in this Yoga Vasishta, there is a Chudala Upakhyanam. Chudala is the name of the lady. She teaches her husband, who was basically interested in amorous pursuits. Similarly, in another great Vedanta text called Tripura Rahasyam. Tripura Rahasyam, there is another lady called Hemalekha, who teaches her husband. He is also a king. His name is Hemachuda. He is also a person who was indulging in sensual pleasures. So these two women we see, we find them training their husbands in the spiritual pursuits. So here I was talking about some warning, or rather caveat, before talking about Sringara Shatakam. That is, whatever Bhartrihari talks about women, women need not take offense. It applies equally. What we say in legal terms, we call it mutatis mutandis. So legally, using that legal term, it applies to men also. If Bhartrihari says woman is a bag of filth and whatnot, it applies to men also. Man also is a bag of filth, and not only women. So that is what I want to first say. And then we will now get into the text now. So the very first section, like the earlier Niti-Shatakam also, this Shatakam also, it is divided into sections. It is divided into 6 sections actually. So in these 6 sections, we see this 3 prashamsa. Sri Prashamsa, it is having about 20 verses. Sri Prashamsa, as the name indicates, it is about, in praise of women. How women are very powerful. Women are very powerful, and then women means the Kama, indirectly Kama is very powerful. It is not as though the Sri is powerful, it is the Kama which is powerful. So you see, for example, the very first shloka, he says, Smitena bhavena cha lajjaya bhiya parammukhaihi ardhakataksha vikshanaihi. I keep reading some shlokas, some sample shlokas. I wish to cover about 50 shlokas today. Yeah, among those 50, I may choose about 15 shlokas or so that I can read it fast and then explain it in English, explain them in English. Smitena bhavena cha lajjaya bhiya parammukhaihi ardhakataksha vikshanaihi. Vachobhir kalayena lilaya samasta bhavaih khalu bandhanam striyaha. The last line is bandhanam striyaha. The women, they become a bondage for men. How do they become a bondage? So he says that is smitena, by their smiles, bhavena, by their very very expressive looks, lajja is feeling shy and that coyness. Then parangmukhaihi, sometimes turning away, parangmukha is turning away, ardhakataksha vikshanaihi, by throwing some cross glances. Normally women's looks, they are described as not straight looks, but some cross looks, kataksha, it says, kataksha. So kataksha means at the end, the end of the eye. So they see, they throw the glances like that, and those glances, they go like arrows. So that is how the poets describe it. Kataksha vikshanaihi, vachobhihi irshya kalahena lila, irshya kalaha. Sometimes they fake some quarrel, they fake quarrels, and with all these things, the women, they constitute a sort of bond. They have a bondage. They are like a bondage for man. And even in the next shloka also, he goes on like that. He goes on saying, all these assets which we describe, all the hava bhava, as we say, all these things, they are actually their strength, and also there is also not strength, there is also their weapon, not only their ornament, but also their weapon. Strinam etad bhushanancha ayudhancha. All these things which were described, all her smiles and the coyness, and then that fake quarrels and all these things. In the next shloka also certain things are described. For example, Bhru Chaturiyat Kunchitakshah Katakshah. Bhru Chaturiya. Bhru is brow. Bhru Chaturiyat means by their ability to turn their brows in any whatever manner they want, and by squeezing their eyes and then looking, throwing cross glances at the people. Kunchitaksha, eyes squeezed, and Snigdha Vachaha. Kataksha means that cross glances, and Snigdha Vachaha, very cooing words, and Lajitantascha Hasas, very hasa is a smile. Lajitantascha, very shy smiles. Leela Mandam Prasthitancha Sthitancha, and very gracefully or in a very nimble way, walking in a nimble way, whether it is walking or sthitam, even when they are standing in a very nice posture. Srinam etad bhushanancha ayudhancha. It is not only a bhushanam, it is not only an embellishment for the women, but also they are the weapons with which they control man. Of course, and as I said just now, we have to apply these things to men also, because a man also, as Shakespeare would say, struck before a wanton ambling nymph. So a person who is very well endowed by nature, so he will be strutting before women. So that strutting, that also creates equal amount of flutter in the minds of women. So that also we have to see. It is not only the man not the woman who has to be blamed, because man and women, they are supposed to be alambana vibhava for Sringara rasa. For example, for any rasa, there are what are called alambana vibhava, uddipana vibhava, etc., etc. Vibhava anubhava vyabhichara sanyoga, the rasa nishpattihi. There is a sutram like that in Bhartrihari, in say that Natya Shastra of Bharata. So what is this rasa? Rasa is produced by all these vibhava, anubhava, all these things. Alambana vibhava means for a person to have this Sringara rasa, a woman has to be there. Woman is the alambana. For a woman, man is the alambana. So both are equally guilty. Both are equally to be blamed. So man is an alambana vibhava for the woman, and woman is and vice versa. So then again, there may be other uddipana vibhava, and then say what is that called anubhava. Anubhava is, there is another technical term called anubhava. That is bhru vikshepana, the turning of brows, and then throwing some nice glances and coyness and smiles and all these fake quarrels, all these things, they are all anubhava. Anubhava means which enhance that rasa, enhance that rasa. So then we come to another shloka, for example. He says, how do you say that women are, who says women are weak? Women are so strong. I'm skipping so many shlokas because all shlokas are worth reading, and then there is a lot of, there is an elaborate commentary by one scholar here. There is an elaborate Sanskrit commentary. So I cannot go into all that. I'll read a couple of shlokas here and there. He says, the shloka number 10, he says, these poets have actually told so many lies. Poets have already always said that women are abala. Abala is, a very weak sex, as we call, weaker sex as we call in English also. So the poets have built up this narrative, let us say, and this is all false. How nunam hite kavivara viparita vacho. Kavivaraha, Viparita Vachaha. Kavivaraha means all these great poets. Viparita Vachaha means the people who have told wrong things. Viparita. Viparita means exactly the opposite. If the truth is something, they tell exactly the opposite. And ye nityam ahu abala iti kamini hita. So every day they say, oh, these are all abalas, 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 etc. Yabhir vilola tara taraka dushtipatehi chakradayopi vijitas swavala kathamtaha. By their very seductive and alluring glances, vilolatara taraka drushtipataihi. Drushtipata means the glance lands on a person. The glance, the looks land on a person. And by that, even Indra, people like Indra, Chakradayopi Vijitaha, even people like Indra, they are all vanquished by their drushtipataihi. How do you say that they are all abalas? So that is he is indirectly telling the power of this kama. And again, when we say another example, if I take, so in another sloka, for example, he compares the woman, he describes the woman. So in that, she is not even bothered about this fellow. But even then, this gentleman, this person is so much fascinated or enchanted by her looks. How she is just, she is compared to, or rather he uses words which usually certain Vedantic terms actually he uses, Vedantic terminology he uses. Kesha Sanyaminaha, her hair are like Sanyami. Sanyami means a sage. A sage is one person who has controlled himself. So here hair are compared to sage because they are also well controlled. That means well combed and then well probably tied. Sanyaminaha, how can we say that? Neatly tied up, we can say. Then Shruterapi Parangate Lochane. Shruterapi Parangate means her eyes are so wide that they are extending up to the ears. So Shruti means Vedas. So it is as though it has crossed, they studied all the Vedas deeply. So such terms are used. This is also an alankara. It is also called a sort of, what is this alankara? Shlesha. There is a shlesha. Shlesha means a pun on the words. Sanyaminaha. Sanyami means self-control. At the same time, well tried. Then again here, Shrutehe Parangate. Shruti means Veda. And another meaning is Shruti is Shravanam, that is ear. Eyes so wide that they are extending up to ears. Then Antarvakramapi Swabhava Shuchibhi Kirnam Dvijanam Ganehi. And her mouth is having so many Dvijaganas. Dvijagana means the lines of all scholars. Dvija means all these scholars, Brahmins, we can say Brahmanas, all these Dvijapankti. Dvijapankti Dvayojvala, we also hear in Lalita Sahasranama, Dvijapankti. That is Dvijapankti, there is one Pankti down and one Pankti up. So like that, Swabhava Shuchibhihi, her teeth are so Shuchi. Shuchi means they are so pure, so perfect, so clean, like that. And Muktanam Satata Adhivasa Ruchirau, Vakshoja Kumbha Vimau, and her bosom, Vakshoja Kumbha means Vakshoja means something, the bosom, the strong bosom. And what is that? Muktanam satata adhirvasa ruchirau. Mukta means, again, there is a pun on the word mukta. Mukta means people who are liberated in terms of Vedanta, the people who are liberated. Mukta, somebody who is now, who has gone beyond the bondage. That is mukta. Mukta means one who has attained freedom. Then what about this mukta? Mukta means mutyam, what we say in Telugu, mutyam, that is pearls. So she is wearing all the pearl garlands, which are these pearl garlands are resting, pearls are all resting on her bosom. So that is what it means. Satata adhivasa, always the pearls are dancing on her breasts. So in this manner, itam tanvi vapuh prashantam apite. Oh, in this manner, hey tanvi, oh my dear slender woman, tanvi means a slender woman. Ragam karotye even when she is just keeping quiet, even when she is not doing anything, she is producing ragam, she is producing anuragam in her, in us. So that is what he says. Then another sloka also he says, what is this unprecedented skill which you are having? It is something which is not seen anywhere. What is this skill? He is taking the picture of an archer. An archer, say an archer shoots an arrow and then he hits the target. So, but here, even without shooting arrow, she is able to vanquish the enemies. What is that? She is by her own gunai, he says. Again, there is a pun in this. Mugdhe dhanushkata keyam apurvat vai drusyate. Oh, my dear girl, what is this great skill in archery, which you don't find anywhere? I have not seen this archery, this skill anywhere. Why? Apurva means not seen anywhere. Mayi drishyate yaya vidyasi chetamsi gunairevana sayakaihi. You are hitting the hearts of the people by gunas, by guna only, and not by arrows. Here the pun is on the word guna. Guna means the bow string is called guna. There is a bow, there is a main bow is there. Guna is that bow string which is hooked to that the two ends. And of course, the arrow is cocked on that bowstring and then it is released. So without even releasing the sayaka, gunaihi eva na sayakaihi, you are not even throwing any arrows. By your gunaihi eva, that means you are having so many gunas in you. Gunas means so many, all these gunas. Gunas, you're not talking in terms of virtues and all that. He is talking in terms of all the say all the nice brows and then nice structure and then nice nose, maybe nice ears, nice teeth, and all these, and also her smiles, her coyish nature, all these things, they are the gunas. So gunaihi eva, by your gunas, by all your attributes, guna here is attributes, by all your attributes, you are vidyasi chetamsi, all these hearts, the minds of all these people, they are all hit by your guna, by mere jya shabda. You see, when a big warrior goes to the battlefield, as we see in Mahabharata, even if he just makes this bowstring, even if he twangs it, bowstring, all the enemies they are all baffled. We see such description in Mahabharata and also in Ramayana, where the archer simply twangs his bows, and by just hearing the sound of the bowstring, the enemies they shudder. So that is what is described here also. Then, if we see, then we come to another shloka, for example. We come to another section, let us say. I skipped many shlokas in the first section, and we come to the second section, which is called Sambhoga Varnanam. Sambhoga actually is the conjugal bliss which a man and woman have, that is Sambhoga. There are two levels of Sambhoga, that is, one is called Sambhoga Sringara and Vipralambha Sringara. Sambhoga Sringara is that where the man and woman are together and then they do enjoy. Vipralambha Sringara also is a sort of Sringara, where, for example, Megha Sandesha is an example for Vipralambha Sringara, where the man and woman are separated. So this man is having the pangs of love, and that lady also is having the pangs of love. And that their pangs of love, the description of their, pangs of separation. So that is what is Vipralambha Sringara. So here, of course, Bhartrihari describes those things also. And in this Sambhoga Sringara, let us see one shloka. For example, how a man feels to have oneness with woman, he says. That is, adarshane darshanamatra kama. Društva parishvanga sukhaikalola. When she is not around, when the lady is not around, then he wants to look at her. He wants to just have a look at her. That's all. Darshana matra kamaha. Darshana matra means it is enough if I just have a look at her. That is what he wants. And when she is seen, he is not content with that. He wants to hug her. Društva parishvanga sukhaika lolaha. Društva, having seen, he doesn't want to keep quiet. He wants to he wants to hug. And alingitayam punarayatakshyah. And when that embrace also takes place, ayatakshi means a woman with wide eyes. Then ashasmahe vigrahayor abhedam. Ashasmahe, we do always aspire for oneness, and there is no separation, but just be united, and then there is no separation. So that is what that is how he describes this power of kama. But then here we should also see that adarshane darshanamatra kama. That is, when the woman is not there, the man is thinking about her. So that is how it is developing. As Gita says, dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu upajayate, sangas sanjayate kamaha. So that those 2-3 lines are there. But dhyayato vishayan, if your mind is contemplating anything, then it gets attached to that also. Sangaha teshu upajayate. In those objects, sangha means attachment. The longing for them develops. So here also, the moment this man is thinking about her, he is thinking about her. Okay, suppose he has seen somebody and he is not busy with something else. If he is busy with some other activity, his mind may not go there. If his mind is not busy, then he is simply thinking about that. So then he wants to see. So that is why all this religion, all our texts, they say, keep your mind busy in bhakti. Like Mukundamala says, Jihve kirtaya keshavam muraripum, like that, muraripum cheto bhaja sridharam panidvandva samarchaya. So he gives tasks to all the limbs. Oh my dear mind, you think of this. Oh my dear hands, you do this. Oh my dear feet, you go to the temple. So like that, our minds have to be kept busy in something or the other. Otherwise, the mind will be playing mischief. So adarshane darshanamatra kamaha dhyayato vishayan pumsaha. This is an example. So a person who thinks on it, and it goes on and on, the attachment grows. Then, now coming to, then of course the commentators, they have said that this is what is, this bliss is something which is equal to Brahmananda. The commentator here writes, Priyatama Gadhalingana Parishwange Vigalita Vedyantarattvena Brahmananda Sabrahmachari Sukha Vishesha Sambhavat. So he says, that is, when the beloved is hugged, beloved can be man or woman. For a woman it's a man, and for a man it's a woman. Priyatama Gadhalingana Parishwange Vigalita Vedyantarattvena. When the two are in that embrace, there is Vedyantaratvam is gone. Vedyantaratvam means they are not aware of any surrounding. They are not aware of what's happening in the surroundings. They are just aware. They are just oblivious of the whole world. Vigalita Vedyanta. Vigalita means the whole world has dropped off. Then Brahmananda Sabrahmachari. And in the Brahmananda also what happens? In Brahmananda also the world has totally dropped off and you are in that bliss of Brahman. So that is the reason why it is called Brahmananda Sabrahmachari. Sabrahmachari means something which is your co-student in the school. Sabrahmachari means your fellow student in the school. So this Ananda, Gadhalingana, Parishwanga, Ananda is something similar to Brahmananda. So that is how the poets I have always described this thing. And that is the reason why Bhartrihari is going to censure the poets also. The poets have unnecessarily built up this stupid narrative, and which has caught us. So that is what he is going to say. Then let us see one shloka where he says about Sringara. Right from the beginning, I was saying that Sringara has to be controlled. That is it. No scripture will say, no, you have to totally eradicate it, you have to totally eschew it and all that. But then there is a way of doing it. And Bhartrihari seems to be saying that having Sringara with the wife need not be a very, 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 not a dull and drab affair. it can be very joyful also. So that is what he says. For example, in one shloka number 24, prang mameti manag anagatarasam. Prang mameti ma. Initially, the woman is, they say, no, she is just nudging him away. No, I don't, no, not now, something like that. Jatabhilasham tataha. After some time, the interest is aroused. And sabridam, again, some shyness. And tadanu slathiku tatanu. Then comes near and then the limbs become loose. There is no resistance. Then pratyastha dhairyam punaha. Whatever stiffness was there earlier, the stiffness of mind, dhairyam is stiffness of mind. It goes away and then becomes relaxed. And then again, what happens? Premardram spurhaniya nirbhara raha krida pragalbam. Raha krida means encouraged by all that. Raha krida is, what can we say? That solitude, not solitude, the privacy. That encouraged by that privacy. And ardram is wet. Wet in love, you can say steamy in love. What does she do? She becomes pragalbha. Pragalbha is quite aggressive. Tato nishanka anga vikarshana adikasukham. Nishanka anga vikarshana. Nishanka, absolutely without any inhibition. Nishanka means without any inhibition. She is so fully and actively, pragalbha means very aggressively engaged. And this is something which is enjoyable. Ramyam kulasti ratam. Ramyam is something which is recommended actually, something which has to be enjoyed. So poet seems to say that, like Shakespeare says, about the love between a man and not love, the love play, let us say, between husband and wife. He says, a dull, stale, tired bed, he says in King Lear. So it need not be like that. It can be very active. It can be very, the conjugal bliss can be ramyam. Ramyam is something which is that, something which is desirable. Rama means to enjoy. Ramyam means to be enjoyable. So he says it is something which has to be enjoyed. So Bhartrihari is not prohibiting, love. Then even in the next shloka also he says the same continuation. He's in the same continuation of this shloka. He says, Urasi nipatitanam srasta dhammillakanam mukulita nayananam kinchid unmilitanam upari surata kheda svinna gandasthalanam adhara madhu vadhunam bhagyavantah pibanti. So he talks about very, very fortunate people. Who are those fortunate people? Those fortunate people are, they are the fortunate people on whose chest these women have fallen. Urasi nipatitanam, they have fallen on the chest of a man, that is, they have come on to the top. Then this rasta dhammillakanam, because of that, very aggressive actions, the hair has become hair, knot, etc., gone away, and then hair is loosened. As rasta dhammilla means that hair, what we call chuda, that chuda is now gone. And mukulita nayananam, their eyes are half open. Kinchid unmilitanam, eyes are just half open, and that is because of that ecstasy. And uparisurata kheda svenna gandasthalana. Uparisurata means upari means upper. So uparisurata means when the woman comes onto the top. Svinna gandasthalana, and a body full of svinna, sveda, what is this? Sweat. Sveda is sweat. Looks to be cognate also. So svinna gandasthalana, that is what is called purushayata. The woman becomes purusha. Kamini purushayate, it is said. Adhara madhu vadhunam bhagyavantah pibanti. Vadhunam, here Bhartrihari makes it clear that it is not with any other woman, but it is with your own wife, vadhu. Bhagyavantah. So bhagyavantah, very fortunate people, they have this situation. So all this description, I have not read, I am not reading all this commentary in Sanskrit. It is almost like a Kama Shastra commentary. So there is a lot of what is this Anubhava, what is Vibhava, all those Uddipanam, all those things there he has described here. So then, now let us see one more shloka, which is actually setting the tone for this Sringara Shatakam. That is saying that now it is coming to some serious censure. Ragasya agaramekam. This is the abode of desire. This is woman, you see, woman's body, that is the abode of desire. Not that she is having desires, she is the abode for all of our desire, all our desires are concentrated in her. Ragasya agaramekam. Naraka shata mahadukha samprapti hetu. Mahadukha samprapti hetu means that is the cause for all the agony, all the pain, all the sorrow, which is equal to 100 hells. Naraka shata is going to be equal to 100 hells. And mohasya utpatti bijam, that is the origin of all this, our deluded thinking. Moha. Moha is another word which is used in, it is a technical word in Vedanta Shastra. Moha means, it comes from a root called muhu, muhu vaichitriye. That means you are not able to see the truth. You are fancying something. Moha is basically about fancying something and having a wrong perception of things. We are not able to see things rightly. We are having a deluded thinking. Sometimes we underestimate or sometimes we reject something. So moha is something in which you are not able to see the things in a correct perspective. So mohasya utpatti bijam jaladhara patalam jnanataradhipasya. So it is a sort of thick cloud which is veiling the moon, the jnanam, the moon called jnanam. So when the thick clouds are there, moon is clouded. So it is this woman is somewhat like Jaladhara Patalam is a thick cloud, huge cloud, which is actually, that is eclipsing the moon. It is veiling the moon. And that moon is compared to Jnana. Jnana Taradhipasya. That moon is Jnanam. That Jnanam is shrouded or clouded by this lady, just as the cloud is veiling the moon. And then Kandarpasya Ekamitram. Kandarpasya Ekamitram. Kandarpa. Kandarpa is again a significant word. Kutsitaha darpaha kandarpaha. That is the meaning. Kutsitaha darpaha kandarpaha. That is unnecessary pride. When a person is young, even an ordinary fellow also, he thinks he is equal to some Schwarzenegger or he is equal to some any other Bond-like characters. So every young man will feel like that, and every young woman may feel that she is some Hollywood actress or something like that. So Kandarpa is Kutsitaha Darpaha. Darpa is, that is pride. Oh, I am so beautiful, I am so handsome. So that sort of pride is there in every young person, man or woman. Then Prakatita Vividha Spashta Dosha Prabandham. So she is a repository of all doshas, or all these obstacles which a person is going to have. Loke asmin anarthavraja kulabhavanam yavanadanyadasti. Loke asmin nahi anarthavraja kulabhavanam yavanadanyadasti. Apart from this yavanam, apart from this youth, he is now talking about not only about women, he is also talking about youth. Apart from this youth, there is nothing which is more harmful. So that is why we also say yavanam dhana sampatti, yavanam youth dhana sampatti, prabhutvam, that is being in power, avivekita, being also foolish. Even one is enough. One of these is enough. And what to talk of situation where a person has all the four. That is what Hitopadesha says. In the Hitopadesha, I think one of the first few shlokas. So here he is talking about, he is setting the tone for this whole Shatakam. Even earlier also, right from the beginning we have been seeing. Then let us see all these pitfalls actually, which are there in Yavana. These are the pitfalls which lead to the downfall of a person. Then we see, if we see all this, a question arises in our mind. What is the rasa in this Sringara Shatakam? Normally, apparently, or on the face of it, we think that, oh, Sringara rasa is the rasam in this. But then if we see closely and if we pass through, we'll see that the objective of describing all this is to generate some dispassion, and then have a sort of mature approach towards this kama. So that is what we see. And what is the rasam? So Alankara Shastra, if we see Alankara Shastra, for example, if you say take Dhvanya Loka of Anandavardhana, so there Dhvanya Loka, there is a discussion on what is the rasa in Mahabharata. Mahabharata, what is the rasa? Normally we say, okay, Veera rasa, something like that. All the warriors, they do come, and then there is so much of fight, and then there is so much of valor and all those things which are seen. But then the objective of all that, the objective of showing such mighty war, and that futility of that mighty war, at the end of the mighty war, all the Pandavas, they are so depressed, having won that mighty war, they are so depressed. So the rasa there is a Shanta rasa. The rasa in Mahabharata is a Shanta rasa, because all this description is only to demonstrate the futility of all these wars. So that is that is how the discussion goes. So if we see on those lines, the rasa here, it has to be Shanta rasa only, because ultimately the objective is to lead a person to dispassion, develop vairagya. Slowly and slowly, as we know, as we go through, we will see, he will be talking about how all these things are very ephemeral, very transient in nature, how we have to get over this. So he is going to say all that. Then, we have to say that Sringara Rasa is there. In several slokas, there is a lot of description. In fact, I have skipped some slokas where there is a more description of women and all that. But then the objective is to develop dispassion. So that is how we have to see that the main rasa is Shanta rasa. Like in Mahabharata, the main rasa is Shanta rasa and the subsidiary rasa is Veera rasa. So similarly here also the main rasa has to be not Sringara but Shanta rasa. The subsidiary rasa will be Angi rasa is Angi rasa and Anga rasa, they say. Angi rasa is the main. Anga is the limb of it. Anga rasa is Sringara rasa. Angi rasa is Shanta rasa. So that is how we have to understand. Then let us see, come to another sloka, that is sloka number 32. In sloka number 32, he talks about a very free man, a very free person, a very self-respecting person. He goes every day, he goes and bends his head before all types of people. For what? He asks, for what are you doing all these things? That is because you are hit by the doe-eyed beauty who is sitting there. You are hit by the doe-eyed beauty and you want to please her, you want to get certain things and then be with her. So that is how you are, that is what is making you bend your head everywhere. That is what he says. Otherwise, you will be happily staying on the banks of Himalayas, on the slopes of Himalayas, where all great sages are moving about. Siddhadhyasita kandare. Siddhadhyasita means where all the Siddha Purushas, all these enlightened people, they will be there. And Hara Urusha Skandha Avarugna Drume, Skandhavarugna Drume. So where Shiva's vehicle, that is Shiva's Vahanam, that is the bull, Nandi, it has broken the branches of trees here and there. When that Nandi goes, naturally breaks the trees. Even when bulls go in the forest, they do break some trees, bulls and elephants particularly. So like that, you will feel, I would have happily stayed there, Ganga Dhauta Shilatale, where on some slope, where the river Ganga is washing all these nice stones. So on the banks of river Ganga, I'll be sitting on some stone, and Himavata Sanu Sthite Shreyasi, on that Himavata Sanu, on the slopes of Himalayas, I will be happily there. Kah kurvita shirah pranama malinam lanam manasvi jano. Kah kurvita. Who will do this? Shirah pranama malinam. Shirah pranama, bowing my head and touching my head, touching their feet with my head. So that is what people do, touching the feet, touching somebody's feet with head. Shirah pramanam. You are actually soiling your own head. And why do you do all these things? It is only for this. Yad vitrasta kuranga shaba nayana nasyuhu smarastram striyaha. This is this woman who is the arrow, who is the weapon of smara. Smara is Manmatha. Smara is Manmatha. This Manmatha's weapon, it has hit me. Because this Manmatha's weapon has hit me, I am doing all this stupid bending before people and all such things. Then in another sloka, he comes to, for example, he says, I am telling you the truth. He says, I am going to tell you the truth. What is this? What is this truth? He says, I am telling you the truth, not out of any prejudice or any such malice. I am telling a truth which holds in all the 7 worlds, he says. Let me come to the shloka. Shloka number 40, for instance. Satyam jana vachmi. Hey janaha, oh my dear people, I am telling you the truth. Na pakshapatat, not out of any sort of prejudice or anything. Lokeshu saptaswapi tathyametat. In all the 7 worlds it holds. Not only here, it all the 7 worlds. Wherever you go to Devaloka, it holds. You go to some other loka, it holds. You go to some other loka, Yaksha, Kinnara, Gandharva, whatever place you go, this rule holds. What is that? Na anyat manohari nitambinibhyah. There is nothing which, nothing more powerful than this nitambini for stealing our minds. This nitambini is the most powerful thing which steals our minds. Nitambini means a woman. Nitamba means a wide hip. Nitambini is a woman endowed with a wide hip. And dukkhaika heturnahi ganchu kashitanya. And similarly, not only the manohari means it steals your heart. Manaha harati. That is Manohari. Manohara means one who steals the mind is called Manohara. Manohara, sometimes we see the name also. So Manohara is somebody who steals the mind. So this Nitambini is one who steals the mind. And she is also the Dukkha Hetu, because you go after her and then you pursue so many things, and then that is the Dukkha Hetu. There is nothing more, nothing greater Dukkha Hetu, the cause of worry, than this Nitambini. Then we come to, in the same tone, we come to another section called Kamini Garhanam. Garhanam is Ninda. Garhanam is Ninda. That is censoring of women. As I said earlier, the censoring of women means censoring of men also, because whatever is said about women, it applies to men also. If he says the woman is endowed with such nice hips and all that, it also applies to men also, because there are certain points of beauty which are there in men also, which are seen by the women. So he says, let us read this shloka. A beautiful shloka. Kante tyutpalalochaneti vipula shroni bhareti unnamat pinottunga payodhareti sumukham bhojeti subhruriti društva muhyati mohate abhiramate prastauti vidvanapi pratyaksha asuchi bhastrikam striyamaho mohasya duscheshtitam. Oh, what to talk of the mischief of this moha. Moha is deluded thinking which makes us not to see things in the correct way. More is deluded thinking. So mohasya duscheshtitam. You see the mischief of this moha. What has it done? It has made us describe this woman who is actually a sack of filth. Pratyaksha asuchi bhastrika. Bhastrika means a sack. A leather sack is called bhastrika. So for example, in olden days, all these ironsmiths, they used to have this bellows. Bellows, you just push the bellow down, up and down, and then the air goes out, and then it heats up that place. That ironsmith is heating up all this coal is there, and then it goes there, and then it is heating up the coal, and fire is made. So that bellow is also in Shakespeare also we find that while describing Cleopatra, the bellows and fans to cool a gypsy's lust. He talks about Antony. So bellows, his once upon a time, Antony was so powerful that his lungs, they were commanding thousands of troops. But now his lungs are commanding bellows and fans to cool a gypsy's lust. So that is how his associate says. So this bellows, pratyaksha ashuchi bhastrika. Ashuchi means something which is made of, which is filth. So the same thing has to apply to man also. So how do we praise the woman? Kanta, kanteti, kanta. Oh, such a lovely person. Utpala lochana, her eyes are so like Utpala is that blue lotus, it is said, blue lotus. I have not seen that. That blue lotus, there's the petals of blue lotus. Vipula shroni bhareti. And when we describe women, shroni means a hip. Even while describing goddesses, our poets take liberties to describe that also. Vipula shroni bhara. That is a person having a wide hips. Unnamat pinottunga payodhareti. Ut namat. Ut means coming up, jumping up. Ut namat pina uttunga payodhareti. A strong bosom bouncing up. Strong sort of bouncing bosom. Pina means very strong. Sumukham bhoja. And face like a lotus. Amboja. Subhru is a brow. Subhru having a nice brow. Then društva muhyati mohate aviramate prastauti vidvanati. I have seen her, gets deluded, and then goes after her, and then prastauti. Prastauti means sings praises, and vidvanapi, even the scholar, the bigger the scholar, the greater the description. So prastauti vidvanapi, pratyaksha ashuchi bhastrika. Pratyaksha, it is seen in your front. You can see directly that such a sack of filth. So I sometimes feel that probably Bhartrihari intended all these verses for a grihastha to ruminate, because in Vedanta Shastra we find a lot of literature which is meant for manana. Mananam, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana are supposed to be 3 steps in Vedanta pursuit. Shravanam is Vedanta Vakyanam Shravanam. You have to listen to say what the Upanishads say and how you have to train yourself, and then you have to do Manana, and you have to logically validate whatever you have heard. So here also, Vedanta Shastra also talks about how a person has to control his senses, how a person has to get over various, Vishaya Vansha. Vishaya means any sense object is called Vishaya. Indriya Vishaya. Indriya means sense. Indriya Vishaya means a sense object. So how a person has to overcome this desire. So that is what is meant here. So, so there, Vishaya Ninda is one chapter in Vedanta literature. Vishaya Ninda. That is the futility of pursuing all these objects. Then there are certain slokas naturally, and a person who is a sadhaka is supposed to ruminate. He is supposed to contemplate on them. He is supposed to apply to him. He is apply to him, and then he is supposed to slowly and gradually he has to get out of these desires. So that is what we see here. Kanteti utpalalochaneti. So a pratyaksha ashuchi bhastrika. Ashuchi, pratyaksha ashuchi bhastrika means right now you can see that it is a bag of filth. It applies to man also, as I said. Then all this thing, technically, it is called, in Vedanta Shastra, it is called Shobhanadhyasa. Shobhanadhyasa is, Shobhanam means something which is so desirable. Shobhanam, Shobha means something which is such lustrous or bright. Shobhanadhyasa means you are attributing greatness to something where such greatness is not there. So every day we find Shobhanadhyasa on so many things, on so many sense objects, not only on heroines, etc. Heroines or heroes. There is so much of Shobhanadhyasa in our movies, particularly in Indian movies. And Shobhanadhyasa about objects. Of course, if suppose I want to buy a phone, there is so much of Shobhanadhyasa, attribution of greatness. Oh, you will have this, you will have that, etc., etc. It's already done by the media. All the big business houses, if I want to buy a phone, they have already done it. Or if it is about a person, a film personality or some celebrity, there is so much of Shobhanadhyasa, which is already done. So the Shobhanadhyasa is only because of our own moha, our own wrong thinking. So that is what the poet means. So this adhyasa has to be, it should not be there. Madhusudana Saraswati in his commentary on, in several places he uses the word called Shobhanadhyasa. Commentary on Gita also he uses the word Shobhanadhyasa. That is attributing some value where it is not there actually. Then let us come to another sloka. And continuing this Shobhanadhyasa, he also tells another sloka. Smrta bhavati tapaya drushtacha unmadakarini. That is just the smrta bhavati tapaya, like an earlier sloka. The moment you just, she comes to your memory, the moment you think of her, then that pangs of longing, you develop a longing to see her. Then drushtacha unmadakarini. And when she is seen, unmadakarini, she is so maddening, it just maddens you. And sprushta bhavati mohaya, sprushta, and when you touch, then you are totally out, so totally deluded. Bhavati mohaya, sanama daita katham. How can you call it a dear? You can call something dear when it is something which is helpful to you, when it is something which is for your say progress in right path, that is spiritual path or something. But here, how can you call her Daita? How can you call her very, very desirable? So he has started, Bhartrihari has started this censoring of women. Then again, there is another question. A question arises: who has done all this? What do we call Shobhanadhyasa? Who has done this Shobhanadhyasa? He says none other than our great poets. All our poets, they have built up all such wrong notions in our minds, and they have misled us. He says, no satyena mruganka esha vadani bhutaha. All the poets are saying that this lady's face is resembling that mruganka. Mruganka is that shashanka, that moon. Oh, her face resembles the moon, etc. So it is not true. No satyena mrugankayesha. Moon has certainly not become her face. And surely, nacha indivaradvandvam lochanatam gatam. And surely that blue lotus, the petals of lotus leaves, they are not her eyes. And na kanakaihi api angayashtih pata. And her body certainly is not made of gold. And poets always describe that her body is golden in color. Then kimtu evam kintvevam kavibhi prataritamanaha. Kavibhi prataritamanaha. That means all our minds are cheated. They are cheated. Prataranam. Prataranam means cheating. Prataranam means cheating somebody else. So prataranam. Prataritamanaha means our minds have been cheated by all these great poets. Prataritamanaha tattvam vijananapi. Though in our heart of hearts we know the truth. We know the truth. It is not true, whatever the poets say. But still, tvang mamsa asthimayam vapuhu mrugadrusham mando janassevate. Tvang mamsa asthimayam vapuhu. That is, tvak mamsa asti. That is, tvak is the skin, mamsa flesh, asti is bone. So mayam vapuhu mrugadrusham mando janassevate. So here again, he is saying, like in an earlier shloka, he said it is a asuchi bhastrika, a bag of filth. So suppose you want to compare it with what Shankaracharya says, Nari stanabharanabhidesham dashtva maga mohavesham. Etam mamsavasadi vikaram. Where Shankaracharya merely said it is merely mamsa vasa adi vikaram. Mamsa is flesh, vasa is fat, adi vikaram. So he merely said it is a formation of flesh and fat. But here he is using stronger terms like a bag of ashuchi, a bag of filth, a bag of all dirty things. And here again, tvang mams asthimayam vapuhu. So if you compare it, and why does Shankaracharya do it? Shankaracharya is doing it to develop vairagya. So here again, Bhartrihari is doing the same thing to instill that sense of vairagya. So poets again, they are blamed by not only by Bhartrihari, they are also blamed by big people like Plato. For example, Plato's book Republic, we know. Plato has written that book in which he has visualized a very ideal, say, kingdom. So in that republic, poets, they have no entry because poets are liars, he says. Poets are all liars. They built up all false notions in the minds of people. But at the same time, Plato is not against music. Plato is for music and also for wrestling. So he wants this music and wrestling to be made compulsory studies for people. And then again, political science and all those sciences. So anyway, poets have no place in Plato's Republic. So similarly, the poets are the people who have cheated us. So that is what he says. Then maybe we will come to another shloka. 48, let us see. 48 shloka, if we see. Yeah, 48 again, it is again talking about developing a sort of realistic view, or Vedanta calls it Vishayeshu Dosha Drushti. Vishayeshu Dosha Drushti. Vishaya means any sense object. In all these sense objects, we are supposed to examine what is the reality behind it. So in Vedanta, they say all these sense objects, they have the defects. Basic defects are anitya, anityatvam, that is very transient, ephemeral in nature. The beauty, you see, it is so ephemeral in nature. Maybe all other things also, whatever great gadgets or whatever great things are we have, all things have that impermanence in them. Then that is anityatvam. Then again, satishayatvam. Satishaya means today I buy one watch or phone or something, and the very next month it is already obsolete. So the obsolescence because of some more desirable thing, that is satishayatvam. Satishaya. Atishaya is in comparison. Satishaya means something which can be compared with something else. Satishayatvam, something better will come. That is why we say Niratishaya Sukham. Brahmananda, we call it Niratishaya Sukham because there is no other Sukham, there is no other bliss which excels that. So here it is Satishaya. All this is Satishaya Sukha. I have a Samsung phone. I have less happiness than somebody who has maybe some iPhone or i13 or something like that. So always it is like that. I may have an ordinary car, and I see somebody who is having some Benz or some Lexus or something, and then I feel, oh, that is much greater. So in all these things, there is Satishayatvam and also Dukkha Pradayitvam. And at the end, not only at the end, after some time, and suddenly something happens to that, suddenly it doesn't work or some problem it develops, then again the same object which we loved, very lovingly acquired and then brought home. So the very loving object, it gives you unhappiness. It becomes the source of unhappiness. In the very next year, it gives unhappiness. The same car, the same phone, the same things, they do give unhappiness. So these three defects mainly they say Anitya, Satishayatvam, and Dukkha Pradayitvam. So here also the poet says you have to have that dosha drushti. It is one of the most important things in the sadhana marga for anybody in the spiritual pursuit. So here you see, Yadetat Purnendudyutihara Mudara Param. You see, that is Drutihara, Purnendudyutihara. So you see this face of this woman, this slender, Tanvangyaha. Tanvangi means a slender woman. So this face, which is compared to, which is said to be stealing, the brightness of the moon. The poets are saying, oh, it is stealing the brightness of the moon. It is so bright. Then again, Mukhabjam, that lotus face, Tanvangya, the slender woman, Kila Vasati Yatra, Adhara Madhu. Adhara Madhu means, Adhara actually, Adhara means lower lip. Adhara Madhu, the lower lip is said to be the place for nectar, Madhu. That is why we say Adhara Madhu. Another word is, I've forgotten anyway. Adhara. And in Kama Shastra, kissing the lower lip only is what is prescribed. Kissing the upper lip is prohibited actually. I don't know why. But kissing the lower lip only. Adhara actually means the lower lip, not the upper lip. So Adhara Madhu, this nectar in the lower lip. Then again, idam tat kimpaka druma phalam idanim atirasam. So idam tat kimpaka druma, there is, and her lip is compared to a red type of berry. I don't know what exactly is the fruit, and that berry which gives such sweet juice. And all this thing, vyatitesmin kale vyatite sati. As time passes, kale vyatite sati, vishameva bhavati, asukhadam, vishameva bhavati. After some time, this adhara madhu is no longer desirable. Maybe adhara madhu and also this mukha maruta means the smell of the mouth. Maybe because of the decaying teeth, whatever applies to man also. So the decaying teeth and all these things, if we visualize, naturally, all these things, bhavati, asukadam means given when the other person comes near, you turn away. So that is what happens. Vyatitesmin kale vishamiva bhavishyat asukadam. So vishamiva, it turns very, very distasteful. The same thing which you relished earlier, it turns distasteful. Time, as we say, devouring time. That is devouring time. As Shakespeare again says, it has drawn furrows on her face, he says. And he tells time, oh, time, you do whatever you want, but don't draw trenches. He also uses the word trenches. Don't draw trenches on her with your antique pen. So that is what he writes. So, but then time is not able to, it will not listen to anybody. Time it does its job. Then we see maybe the last shloka for the day. And let us see this. This last shloka. The woman is compared to a river. You see the poets, they can take anything and then compare anything with anything and then bring up some upamana. So here you see, Unmila Trivali Tarangavalaya. A young woman, a slender woman. Usually it is said to be the Padmini Jati Sri. Of course, the commentators, they have written all that. The Padmini Jati Sri is said to be having 3 folds on her tummy. 3 folds, not fat folds. It is very, very thin and then 3 lines, not even, let us say, like you have 6-pack body, 4-pack body, etc. A slender woman is said to be having it. That Trivali, these 3 lines, Trivali Tarangavalaya, these things, they are like Taranga. Taranga means the waves of a river. These are the waves of a river. And Protunga Pinastana Dvandve Nodyata Chakravaka Yugal. So this Uttunga means something which is bouncing up. Uttunga, Ut means up, coming up. Uttunga penis tanadvanve. They are compared, the two breasts, they are compared to Chakravaka Yugal. Chakravaka is a very fleshy bird. Chakravaka we also see in Ramayana, in Aranyakanda. Chakravaka birds. So this Kabandha guides those people. You please go there and then you can have that nice, that Pampa Saras. In that Pampa Saras, you will find nice Chakravaka birds which will be food for you. So something like that Kabandha says at the end of Aranyakanda. So like the Chakravaka is a very fleshy bird. So these women's breasts are compared to the Chakravakas which are there in the river. This is all comparison with the river. One is Trivali is like waves, and then Sanadvandva is like that, and Vaktrambujodbhasini. Vaktrambujodbhasini. Vaktra means the face. Ambuja, it is like a face. Then again, Kantakara. This Kantakara Nadi Iyam Abhitaha Krurashayan Eshyate. It is leading us to a very, very cruel place. It also means Krura Ashaya, Krura Jantunam Ashaya. That is, it is the place where all the sharks and such things live. Krura, all these sharks, etc., they do live. Another meaning is that she is she is very cruel in her mind. That also is there. Krura Ashayam Eshyate. Samsararnavam Neshyate Samsararnavam Ajjanam Yadi. If you don't want to get drowned in that ocean of samsara, Arnava is ocean, Majjanam is just getting drowned. Neshyate samsara Arnava Majjanam Yadi. If you don't want to get drowned in this ocean of samsara, keep her far, far away. Durena Santyajyatam. Go far, far away, he says. So like that, I think we'll stop here. So these verses, I think that these verses are mainly for I should not say meditation. Meditation means in a much bigger sense. Rumination, at least, I can say rumination by any samsari. At a very young age, a newly married person also can read it. And slowly as he reads, he will find that what he is saying is true. What he is saying is true, and then slowly he is expected to come out of what is called infatuation. Come out of the infatuation, and Bhartrihari's idea is to guide a person into slightly higher pursuits. The person, okay, you enjoy karma. It is not as though it is prohibited. You enjoy karma. And I also read out those slokas where the woman and man, they're in such a bliss. So that is very much enjoyed and advisable. Ramyam Palastri Ratham, he said. But thereafter, after some time at least, you have to get out of it. So that is how is Bhartrihari's approach. We'll continue the next set of 50 verses tomorrow. There are any points or any points of discussion?
Thank you, Aravindaji, for a very engaging, very insightful session. I think all our audience deeply enjoyed it. Viewers, if you have any questions, you can just ask now. We'll wait for a few minutes. Aravindaji, I think one of the important aspects is there is a great confusion, at least in current Indian society, perhaps partly because of the colonial background that we have had the last 200 years. What we see is, on one hand, we see a kind of suppression of the desires, suppression of sensual aspect of life, perhaps as a result of Victorian mentality. But somehow, as a solution or as a response to that, there is deep recklessness as well that we especially find in urban areas. I think, in my personal opinion, in my limited reading and understanding, somehow both the problem and the solution we have imported from the West in our aping of the West. So some of this problem of the desire can be solved by having a proper understanding of desire as a purushartha, desire as a rasa, and refining them further as desire as a bhakti, because even in bhakti there is desire for the Ishvara. So this shastric understanding, be it from the Kama Shastra or the Natya Shastra or the Bhakti Shastra, there is a kind of a elevation which happens when you understand the desire from the Shastric perspective. That is completely missing from the society. So what is your
Yeah,
thought?
I totally agree with you. You are absolutely right. I do not know how far we can blame the West or anything, but then we have been aping. A human being is basically, he apes others. So whoever is powerful at a particular point of time, we do ape. And unfortunately, we have forgotten our literature. In fact, I feel that in even when I was young, maybe I am now about 70, and even when I was young, I found my own people, uncles and grandparents, etc. They were having some idea of these things. Those people, they had some idea of these things, and then they were contented. Basically, even if you give anything to them, they were not very much after all these sense objects and all that. They were very content. And they also had a very healthy family relationship also. It is not as though they didn't, they were all vairagya, steeped in vairagya or anything. They were very much family men also. So if we have some proper understanding of Ramayana, there is so much of description of Sringara. Ramayana, if you see, there are so many similes where, in fact, surprising. Rama, he himself, his Viraha Varnana is there. So Rama, how he describes, and then how he talks about his love for Sita. So there is a very healthy description. And if you come to Kiratarjuni, not Kiratarjuni, I'm sorry, a book like Kumara Sambhava, the 8th chapter, 8th Sarga of Kumara Sambhava is basically about the love making between Parvati and Shiva. So such things are very frankly described. And these people also very piously read all that thing. And similarly, an exercise like this is a sort of spiritual exercise. Reading Bhartrihari's Subhashita, Sringara Shatakam is a sort of spiritual exercise in coming out of a sort of lustful and lascivious approach to husband or wife. You see, nowadays what has happened is, even if we see the Western countries also, the relationship is so fragile. It is so fragile that there is a sort of understanding, or rather a sort of agreement prior to marriage, so that they will have some sex 3 times a day, 3 times a week, or something like that. They do have an agreement, and everything depends on the physical aspect only, and not on other intellectual or emotional aspects. So we, of course, we are also slowly we are going to that, because we have come away from our roots, and all our traditional knowledge is getting totally, evaporating. It's just evaporating, that's all. Unless we again put it in the minds of several people, it slowly evaporates. So this should not evaporate. I'm really happy that you have boldly allowed, or rather you have boldly asked me to talk on Sringara Shatakam. And I also found that it is really good. Sringara Shatakam is a sort of exercise, a spiritual exercise, I feel.
You mentioned in the course of the talk, you highlighted the use of the word Vadhu for the partner in the Sringara Shatakam. I think this highlights that the Bhartrihari was deeply aware of the Dharma Shastras as well, and its stipulations regarding what kind of rati is conductive for overall welfare, and what kind of rati is not conductive to overall welfare. And even in Kama Sutra Vatsayana, we find that there are separate sections on Grihastha Ashrama, rati within the context of Grihastha Ashrama and outside of it. So, from our last session on Niti-Shatakam and all, it appears to me that Bhartrihari was very learned in multiple shastras, multiple traditions. As a king, I think that's a unique feature of him. Is that it?
Correct. Bhartrihari, no doubt, he was in fact, Bhartrihari's Vakyapadiya is studied a very deep subject. In fact, a very serious subject also about the philosophy of language. And of course, the Subhashita is rather unimportant compared to that Vakyapadiya. So Subhashita again is for the growth of a person, a very healthy growth of a person. So even now, if we make our children memorize some sections in some shlokas in Niti-Shatakam, it will be they will be there in their minds. In fact, in our childhood, we learned several shlokas from Niti-Shatakam, Only Sringara Shatakam we did not read. Only later, much later, I happened to see this. So, but in the childhood, if we make children recite the shlokas, some Niti-Shataka shlokas, it will give them some good values and then good approach to life. Basically, good approach to life. For example, Murkha Paddhati. Just keep away from all these murkhas. That is one thing. You have to keep away from such obstinate and opinionated persons who just do not want to listen to others. Huh? So just keep away. And how you have to keep company of good people. So various things. And even how the king behaves. King means a person who is in power. So like that, Dharma and Artha are so beautifully mentioned there. So this traditional learning should not be forgotten, should not be allowed to be evaporated. So that's what I feel.
One of the questions we have received is, when one is under the influence of karma, we lose discrimination and capacity to think. So what should one need to do to come to normalcy, come out of the clutches of karma? So to speak?
Yeah, that is what he has been saying. That is what he has been saying. Moha is wrong thinking or deluded thinking, Shobhanadhyasa. So you have to come out of Shobhanadhyasa. We have to do Vishaya Vichara. Vishaya Vichara means investigate or actually inquire into the nature of what is that object. So that is why he was saying Pratyaksha, Ashuchi Bhastrika, etc. Kanteti, Utpalalochaneti, Vipulashroni Bhareti. All these narrative has been built up by poets. So you come out of all this, and then you have to have a mature idea about love. So that is what he has been saying. So that is the reason why I also feel that these shlokas are for every grihastha at your age, maybe for rumination. You have to ruminate, if not contemplate or meditate, so that gradually, it is not actually prohibiting love. It is actually advocating a very healthy relationship between man and woman, a mature relationship between man and woman.
One last question. I think it is about the authorship. The question is, was this Sringara Shatakam written when the Bhartrihari was a king or when he renounced the world?
That we do not know. In fact, the very identity of Bhartrihari, it is a sort of mystery, because there are so many stories about it. There are several stories that he was actually somebody who is king's brother, not actually king, but king's brother. Then again, another story that he was a jilted person. Jilted means, jilted lover. Not only jilted, not a jilted lover, but a sort of a husband whose wife cheated him. As we say, a cuckolded husband, a cuckolded husband, because he is somebody, some sage, some rishi came and gave a fruit to him, some great fruit, and then he gave it to his dear wife, and that dear wife gave it to her paramour, and that paramour, that fellow, he gave it to her, his dearest woman, and that dearest woman happened to be some servant in the same king's place. And the king sees that fruit, and then he asks her how this fruit has come to you. Then the entire story comes out, and then the king sees that his own wife is so unfaithful to him, and then he becomes a recluse. Some such stories are there, but I don't think so, because Bhartrihari is basically a person who is having a very great knowledge, a very sound knowledge of our philosophy, our Vedanta tradition. And in that tradition only he is writing about all these dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So I don't think that he was a sort of cuckolded husband or anything. I also don't agree with this Koshambi who says that he was somebody who belonged to some sort of proletarian class, or I don't think so. Because if we see Mahabharata, Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, and the way our people lived, very simple way, very simple way. And it is now much more egalitarian than the communism, what communism talks about. And communism minus violence is what we see in Vedanta. So that is it. Voluntary communism or voluntary simplicity, that is.
Thank you, Aravinda ji, for again a very insightful and engaging talk. With this, we conclude today's session. Viewers, we will join back tomorrow again at 11 a.m. to continue this discussion, this enunciation by Aravinda ji on Sringara Shatakam. And do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel Follow us on Facebook and Twitter for recent updates. Thank you
Thank you.
again. Yeah.
Thank you. Harihi Om
Shri Guru
Tatsat.
Pyo Namaha.
Harihi Om Tatsat.